I'm Drew Paul Bell, and today what we're going to talk about is a little bit of architectural theory. This is really just a primer on one idea within the big narrative that is architecture theory. But this video is just going to be, it's literally just a primer, kind of like some surface level talk about the idea of truth in architecture. Okay, so this book I have right here is called The Seven Lamps of Architecture by John Ruskin. He was a cultural theorist back in like the 1800s. This book was published in like 1880. And he has a quote in here that's probably one of my favorite quotes ever. And it's like a big paragraph, so I'm not going to read like the whole thing, but I'm going to skip down. And he's talking about truth. Okay, so he's saying the most grand versions of lies, all right, dishonesty, are not like, when you think of that, you think of like libel, hypocrisy, deceit, okay, but those things are really only felt in being overcome. All right, it's really something else. And then he gets down here to say, but is the glistening and softly spoken lie, the amicable fallacy, the patriotic lie of the historian, the provident lie of the politician, the zealous lie of the partizan, the merciful lie of the friend, the careless lie of each man to himself, that casts that black mystery over humanity, through which we think any man who pierces, as we would thank one who dug a well in a desert, happy that the thirst for truth still remains with us, even when we have willfully left the fountains of it. Is not the big lie that causes problems, it's the quiet lie. What's the word he uses? The careless lie of each man to himself, that casts a black mystery over humanity. What does it mean to be true in architecture? You have to be, he argues that you need to be true in the materials that you use. Something that John Ruskin would shudder at today, right, that quote it would be against, is something like fake laminate flooring, right, where you have like this wood that's like particle board wood or like a plastic. Then the surface is made to look like wood, but it's really not wood, right? That's a lie. And he says it's just as wrong as someone who misrepresents themselves as being a con man. You know, a con man who misrepresents himself, because you have this expectation for it. You believe it's one thing, but really it's not. And it's dishonest, and it's just as dishonest as somebody saying, oh yeah, give me all your money, and I'm gonna go invest this, and we're going to make tons of money, I'm going to give it back to you, and then he just makes off with the money. Now, of course, you're not losing as much when you have when you're talking about like flooring and stuff, but nonetheless, it is not honest. So this is one of the foundational building blocks of kind of art theory, in that to be honest, it has to be true to like what the material is, also to the way it was built. Okay, so if you have things that look like columns that really aren't columns, that's also a lie. Great ornate stuff that's really fake, like, I don't know, like plastic things that are made to look like stone, or like these things that misrepresent themselves to be something else that they're really not. That is what he's arguing against. And that stuff can be quite kitsch. It's very like tacky and off. It's just kind of weird, right? And that's the kind of like aesthetic that I think gets plastered all over the place in like suburbia, because they're like, oh well, let's just have like the fake picket fence that's really plastic but it's made to look like wood. And we're going to have like the door that's textured to look like wood, but it's also plastic too. And the honesty in the materials is wrong, right? But then on an even deeper level, like a philosophical representation is also wrong, because he goes on to talk about, right, John Ruskin in The Lamp of Truth, he goes on to talk about how some of the most honest buildings come from the Gothic time period in Gaul, right, in present-day Germany and France, and the area where, like, in that region, it gets so cold, like it's a very bitter place to live because it's so like harsh. Like he says it in Italy, where like the Renaissance happened. The winter is something that can be quickly forgotten because of the temperate climate during most of the year. Like things might get cold, you kind of like brush it off. But in like the Gothic like regions, that was something that had to be lived with. You have to live with that harshness, and you see that same harshness and severity in their architecture that they build, right? In their churches, these grand things that are just you walk into them and you feel how small you are, and how rough, like how cold that stone is, and how like uncaring like of you, you know, like that. That is symbolic. That's true. That's truth. Not only in its material and the way it was used, right? Because of the way that the structure of like a Gothic cathedral works is pretty amazing, and you have to like everything has to work, you know. So like in terms of structure, it's honest. Also in terms of materiality, it's being honest because it's like carved stone. It's representing the material it really is. It's not stone trying to look like wood. It's not stone trying to look like plastic. It's stone being stone. Then you also throw in the fact that culturally this is true for this culture, and then you have this great balance of honesty, truth, and you'll hear in like the world of architecture a lot of architects shaming other types of buildings, and sometimes if you're new to the world of architecture, it's kind of hard because like you haven't developed a taste, and also you've been surrounded by a bunch of crap. Like you've been surrounded by a bunch of stuff that if you've grown up in typical suburb, it's probably not been like quality architecture that really considers all these different like artistic ideas and artistic implications. Now, do you need to like pander to all those ideas? No, of course you can make something that's just functional and provides air conditioning and shelter, and yeah, you're good, but there's so much more you can do with it, okay? So the artistic, the kind of like higher-minded level of thinking about architecture, it comes down to this art and sort of like relating to human beings and what it means to be human, and things like this, things like truth. I would always feel frustrated hearing teachers talk about that building downtown. Oh, it's just a terrible, ugly building. And I would have it's not that I would have thought it was good looking, it's just that I hadn't thought about it. And I hadn't formed an opinion about some of these things. So then to hear that their immediate reaction about these things was that they were ugly and terrible, I was like, but why? Like I couldn't understand why for a while, and it's coming on. All right, it's been coming on for a little while now, and to me, this lens of truth is like the cleanest lens to look through, to be able to look at something and decide for yourself if it's beautiful or not beautiful. So this notion of truth also comes into the way that things are constructed. I have a trunk here in my apartment that the way that it's put together, I think is a very beautiful trunk. The way that like the metal caps go over the corners is just it's really cool, and they're all there. It's not just there to be cool though, it's there to hold it together. It's what actually needs to be in it to make it work. That aesthetic is something that is true and honest to the materials that they are, what they need to be to make the trunk. And it provides kind of the texture. You could call it ornament, but the stuff that makes it a beautiful trunk. And take this to the scale of looking at buildings. Okay, the way that a building is constructed has to be similar. One more quote that is one of my favorite quotes is by Moshe Safdie. It is that he who seeks truth shall find beauty. He who seeks beauty shall find vanity. He who seeks order shall find gratification. He who seeks gratification shall be disappointed. He who considers himself the servant of his fellow being shall find the joy of self-expression. He who seeks self-expression shall fall into a pit of arrogance. Arrogance is incompatible with nature. Through nature, the nature of the universe, and the nature of man, we shall seek truth. If we seek truth, we shall find beauty. explore what it means to be true and honest in the things that you make in architecture, in the way that you walk through the world, the way that you represent yourself, in the way that you dress, physical ways that are more than just like talking, right? Because you've all probably been told growing up about, I don't lie with your words, but don't lie with your buildings, with materials, and things of that nature. Okay, so this is just a primer on like one idea in the theory of architecture, and it's something that I've always found to be very helpful in developing my own taste for quality like design. Okay, so I hope this helps you. Let me know what you think in the comments down below. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share, and I will talk to you next time.